A millionaire, Alejandro Valdez, found a lost little girl on the doorstep of his mansion. He was speechless when he saw the girl wore the same necklace as his daughter, who had disappeared months ago. Alejandro had just arrived home much later than usual, his Lamborghini Aventador roaring through the exclusive neighborhood. It was 9:47 p.m., and the empty mansion had made his nights feel endless. As he parked and turned off the engine, he sat for a moment, lost in thought, staring at his illuminated home. His security guard, Roberto, greeted him, mentioning an unusual sound he had heard earlier near the entrance. Alejandro, lost in his own thoughts about his missing daughter, Sofia, barely paid attention. He was weighed down by another day without news, another dead end in the search. But as he climbed the steps to the main entrance, something caught his eye. A dark shape was lying on the ground. His heart pounded as he approached. Could it be? Could this be his Sofia, back after all this time? But as he drew closer, hope turned to confusion. It was a little girl, about Sofia's age of 3, but with dark hair instead of Sofia's blonde. She was curled up, asleep or unconscious, wrapped in a dirty, worn-out blanket. He knelt beside her, his heart pounding, and gently touched her shoulder. "Little one, can you hear me?" he asked softly. The girl stirred slightly, whimpering softly. Alejandro looked around, searching for any sign of who might have left her there, but the street was deserted. "Roberto!" Alejandro called out urgently. "Roberto, come quickly!" The security guard came running, hand on his holstered gun. Alejandro ordered him to call an ambulance, and the police immediately. While Roberto made the calls, Alejandro tried to wake the little girl. "Can you open your eyes? Can you tell me your name?" Slowly, the girl's eyelids fluttered. Alejandro held his breath as large brown eyes, filled with fear and confusion, opened and stared up at him. "Hello," he said, forcing calmness into his voice. "Don't be afraid. You're safe now." The girl blinked, trying to focus. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "Are you thirsty?" Alejandro asked. The girl nodded weakly. "Roberto, bring some water, please, and some clean blankets." While the guard rushed into the house, Alejandro spoke softly to the child. "My name is Alejandro. Can you tell me yours?" The girl shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's okay, don't worry," Alejandro soothed. "Do you know where your parents are?" Another shake of the head, this time with a muffled sob. Alejandro's heart sank. What kind of person would abandon a child so young? Roberto returned with water and blankets. Alejandro helped the girl sit up and offered her the water. She drank greedily, spilling some on her dirty clothes. "The ambulance and the police are on their way, sir," Roberto informed him. "Should I call your lawyer as well?" Alejandro, distracted, simply nodded, his attention focused on the little girl. That was when he saw it, something that made his blood run cold. Around the girl's neck, partially hidden by the dirty blanket, was a necklace he knew very well. With trembling hands, he gently moved the blanket to get a better look. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But there it was, hanging around the neck of this unknown child. Sofia's necklace. The same one he had given her for her 3rd birthday, just weeks before she disappeared. "My God," Alejandro murmured, the world spinning around him. "Roberto, this is Sofia's necklace." Roberto leaned in, his eyes widening in recognition. "But how is that possible?" The little girl, frightened by their reaction, began to cry silently. Alejandro, snapping out of his stupor, instinctively hugged her. "Shh, it's okay," he whispered, rocking her gently. "Everything is going to be all right. I promise." At that moment, the sound of sirens pierced the night. The ambulance and police cars were approaching. "Roberto," Alejandro said, his voice regaining some firmness, "call Garcia. Tell him to come immediately. And contact Detective Ramirez. I want him to reopen Sofia's investigation. Now." The guard hurried off to make the calls as Alejandro continued to hug the little girl. His mind was a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Who was this little girl? How did she end up with Sofia's necklace? And most importantly, could this mean that his daughter might still be alive? The ambulance arrived first. 2 paramedics hopped out and quickly approached. "Good evening," a young woman in uniform greeted them. "I'm Anna, a paramedic. Can you tell me what happened?" Alejandro quickly explained the situation as her partner began examining the girl. The little one clung to Alejandro, refusing to let go. It's okay, sweetheart, Anna told her gently. We just want to make sure you're all right. Can you tell me if you're hurt? The girl shook her head, burying her face in Alejandro's chest. She seems dehydrated and a little malnourished, the other paramedic commented, but I don't see any signs of serious injuries. Still, we should take her to the hospital for a full checkup. Alejandro nodded. I'll come with you. 2 police cars pulled up. 4 officers approached. Mr. Valdez? One of them, a tired-looking middle-aged man, greeted him. I'm Inspector Gomez. Can you tell me what's going on here? Alejandro repeated the story, this time including the detail about the necklace. The inspector's eyes widened. Are you certain it's the same necklace? He asked incredulously. Completely, affirmed Alejandro. It's one of a kind, specially made for my daughter. This can't be a coincidence. Inspector Gomez frowned thoughtfully. This could be a very important lead in your daughter's case, Mr. Valdez. We'll need to take detailed statements and examine the necklace. Of course, Alejandro agreed. But first, the little girl needs medical attention. I'm going with her to the hospital. You can find me there to take my statement. As the paramedics prepared the girl for transport, Alejandro noticed a familiar car pulling up. It was Manuel Garcia, his lawyer and trusted friend. Garcia hurried over, his face a mixture of concern and curiosity. Alejandro, what the hell is going on? Roberto told me something about a little girl and Sophia's necklace, but I didn't understand any of it. Alejandro quickly filled him in as they walked towards the ambulance. Garcia listened intently, his expression turning more serious with every word. This is unbelievable, he finally said. What do you think it means? I don't know, Manuel, Alejandro replied, his voice cracking slightly. But I have to find out. This little girl, she could be the key to finding Sophia. Garcia placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. I'm coming with you to the hospital. I'll make sure everything is done by the book and that your rights and the little girl's are protected. Alejandro felt a surge of gratitude. They climbed into the ambulance, where the little girl was settled on a stretcher, clutching a clean blanket and looking around with frightened eyes. As the ambulance pulled away, Alejandro took her small hand in his. Everything is going to be okay, little one. I promise. The girl stared up at him for a moment, then to everyone's surprise, spoke for the first time. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence of the ambulance, it was crystal clear. Luna, she said. My name is Luna. Alejandro felt his heart leap. It was a start, a tiny glimmer of hope in the darkness that had enveloped his life for the past few months. As the ambulance sped through the night, he clung to that hope with all his might. It's very nice to meet you, Luna, he said with a trembling smile. We're going to take very good care of you. The journey to the hospital and to the truth about Sophia had just begun. The journey to the hospital was a mix of tension and anticipation. Luna had gone quiet after revealing her name, but she hadn't let go of Alejandro's hand. Garcia used the time to make calls, mobilizing private investigators and a legal team to manage the situation. A medical team awaited their arrival at the hospital. Luna was whisked away to an examination room, Alejandro right behind her. Despite initial protests from the staff, Garcia convinced them to allow Alejandro to stay with the girl. It's crucial she feels safe and comfortable, he argued. Mr. Valdez is the only person she seems to trust right now. As doctors examined Luna, Alejandro couldn't help but stare at the necklace. It brought forth a mix of hope and a painful squeeze in his chest every time he saw it. Mr. Valdez, a doctor called softly, could you come with me for a moment? I need to ask you some questions about the girl. Alejandro glanced at Luna, who seemed close to panicking at the thought of him leaving. Can it wait? He asked, dreading leaving Luna's side. I don't want to leave her alone. Of course, the doctor said understandingly. Luna seems to feel safe with you. She approached the bed where Luna sat, still clinging to Alejandro's hand. Hello, Luna. I'm Dr. Martinez. How are you feeling? Luna looked at Alejandro, seeking approval. He smiled encouragingly. It's okay. You can talk to her. Dr. Martinez is here to help you. Luna turned back to the doctor. I'm hungry, she whispered. We'll take care of that soon, sweetheart. Dr. Martinez smiled. First, can you tell me if anything hurts? Luna shook her head. Good, that's good, said the doctor, making a note. She turned to Alejandro. Mr. Valdez, can you tell me exactly how you found Luna? Alejandro recounted the events, from arriving home to discovering the necklace. The doctor listened intently, her eyes moving between Alejandro and Luna. I understand, she said. Mr. Valdez, I have to inform you that we must follow protocols in cases like this. We will need to run some tests and contact social services. Alejandro felt a knot forming in his stomach. What exactly does that mean? He asked. At that moment, Garcia entered the room, accompanied by a man in a suit whom Alejandro immediately recognized. Detective Ramirez, Alejandro greeted him, surprised. I didn't expect to see you so soon. Detective Ramirez, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes that had seen too much, nodded gravely. Mr. Valdez, I came as soon as I received the call. This is the girl? Alejandro nodded, noticing Luna tense in his arms at the new arrival. Luna, he said softly, this is Detective Ramirez. He's a friend, here to help us. Ramirez approached slowly, his expression softening as he addressed Luna. Hello, Luna. I hear you've had a very difficult night. Luna didn't reply, but she didn't look away from the detective. Ramirez turned to Alejandro. Mr. Valdez, I need to speak with you privately. I can't leave her, Alejandro interrupted, anxiety rising. She's been through enough. I'm staying with her, he insisted. I'll stay with her, Garcia offered. You two can speak here. Luna and I will cover our ears, won't we, Luna? To everyone's surprise, Luna giggled at Garcia's exaggerated gesture of secrecy. Alejandro felt his heart melt a little at the sound. All right, he conceded, reluctantly stepping away from the bed. Ramirez led him to a corner of the room and spoke in a low voice. Mr. Valdez, I understand you found this girl with your daughter's necklace. I need you to tell me everything. Alejandro repeated the story again, watching as the detective's expression grew more serious. This could be the break we've been waiting for, Ramirez stated when Alejandro finished. But it could also be a cruel coincidence. I need you to understand, Mr. Valdez. We can't jump to conclusions. We need to investigate this thoroughly, and that means taking Luna to a safe place to question her properly. Alejandro felt his blood go cold. What do you mean, a safe place? She's safe here with me. Ramirez sighed. I understand your concern, but you have no legal claim to this child right now. Social services will have to be involved. No! Alejandro's voice rose slightly. They can't take her. She needs me. I need her. Garcia, who had been discreetly listening, stepped closer. Detective Ramirez, we understand the need to follow protocol, but given the potential connection to Sophia's case, wouldn't it be better to keep Luna in a familiar environment? Mr. Valdez has the resources to provide 24-hour security and anything Luna might need. Ramirez seemed to consider this for a moment. It's unorthodox, but given the sensitivity of the case, I could argue that keeping the girl with Mr. Valdez might be beneficial to the investigation. However, we'll need approval from a judge and social services. I'll handle that, Garcia said with determination. I know several judges who'd be willing to hear us out, even at this hour. Alejandro felt a wave of gratitude towards his friend. I'll do whatever it takes, detective. Just don't ask me to leave her. Ramirez looked at Alejandro for a long moment, as if evaluating him. Finally, he nodded. All right, we'll work on it. But understand this, Mr. Valdez. If at any point I feel your involvement compromises this investigation or the girl's well-being, I won't hesitate to take action. Understood, Alejandro replied solemnly. While Garcia made the necessary calls, Alejandro returned to Luna's side. The girl looked at him with a mixture of fatigue and trust that made his heart clench. Luna, he said softly, would you like to come home with me? I have a very nice room where you can rest. Luna's eyes lit up a little. Does it have teddy bears? She asked quietly. Alejandro felt a lump in his throat. Sophia's room was filled with stuffed animals he hadn't been able to bring himself to touch since her disappearance. Yes, he managed to say. It has lots of teddy bears. Luna slowly nodded. Okay. While they waited for news from Garcia, Alejandro sat with Luna, telling her about his home and all the fun things they could do. The little girl listened intently, her eyelids growing heavier. Finally, Luna drifted off to sleep. Alejandro allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. Silent tears rolled down his cheeks as he stroked the girl's hair. I promise to take care of you, he whispered, and together, Maybe we'll find the answers we both need. Outside, night slowly gave way to dawn, bringing the promise of a new day and perhaps the beginning of a path to the truth that Alejandro had been desperately searching for. The drive back to the Valdez mansion was quiet. Luna slept soundly in the back seat. Alejandro watched her through the rear-view mirror, his mind a whirlwind of emotion and unanswered questions. Alejandro, Garcia's voice broke the silence. Are you sure about this? Alejandro looked away from Luna to face his friend and lawyer. What do you mean? Garcia sighed, choosing his words carefully. I understand what this means to you, but have you considered the legal, the emotional implications? Manuel, how can you even ask me that? Alejandro's voice tightened. That little girl has Sophia's necklace. My Sophia. How can I ignore that? I'm not saying ignore it, Garcia replied calmly. Just be careful. We don't know anything about this girl, where she came from, how she got the necklace. That's why I have to do this, Alejandro interrupted. I need answers, Manuel, and she could be the key to finding Sophia. Garcia nodded slowly. I understand. Just don't get your hopes up too much. I'll do things right, Alejandro assured him, running a hand through his hair in frustration. As they arrived at the mansion, a new chapter was beginning in Alejandro's life, one filled with both hope and uncertainty. The appearance of Luna, the little girl with Sophia's necklace, had thrown his world upside down. He was determined to uncover the truth, but as he looked at the sleeping child, he knew that his quest for answers would be a delicate balancing act, protecting Luna while searching for his own daughter. He was prepared to do whatever it took, but the question remained, would he find Sophia, or would this be another dead end in his agonizing search? I promise I'll do things right. When they arrived at the mansion, Alejandro carried Luna, who barely stirred, exhausted by the night's events, to the guest room. Good night, little one, he whispered, tucking her in. His hand paused over the necklace hanging around Luna's neck. With trembling fingers, he gently touched it, feeling the familiar outline of the butterfly pendant. Mr. Valdez? The voice of Carmela, the housekeeper, startled him. Alejandro turned, noticing the surprised expression on her face when she saw Luna. I need you to prepare some things for our guest. Carmela nodded, though her confusion was clear. Of course, sir. May I ask? Tomorrow, Carmela, Alejandro interrupted gently. I'll explain everything tomorrow. For now, just make sure she has everything she needs when she wakes up. Yes, sir, Carmela replied, casting a last curious glance at Luna before leaving the room. Alejandro lingered for a moment, watching the girl sleep. Who are you, Luna? And what secrets do you hold? Morning came too soon. Alejandro, having barely slept, was in his study when he heard a scream. He jumped from his chair and raced to the guest room. He found Luna sitting up in bed, eyes wide with tears. Where am I? She asked in a trembling voice, seeing Alejandro. You're safe, Luna, he said, approaching slowly. Remember? I brought you to my house last night. You said you wanted to see the teddy bears. Luna blinked, the confusion on her face slowly giving way to recognition. Oh yes, the teddy bears. Alejandro sat on the edge of the bed. Would you like to see them now? Luna nodded shyly. Alejandro offered her his hand. After a moment of hesitation, she took it. They walked to Sophia's room. Alejandro's heart pounded as he opened the door, having not stepped inside for months. Wow, Luna whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the room, filled with toys and stuffed animals. Go ahead, Alejandro encouraged. You can play with anything you like. As Luna shyly explored the room, Alejandro couldn't help but notice the similarities and differences to Sophia. The way Luna moved, the way her eyes lit up at certain toys, it was all painfully familiar and utterly different at the same time. Do you like that one? He asked, watching Luna hug a teddy bear. Luna nodded. He's soft, she said quietly. He was very special to... Alejandro trailed off, his voice cracking. Luna looked up at him curiously. To who? Alejandro took a deep breath. To my daughter, Sophia. Where is she? Luna's innocent question was like a dagger to Alejandro's heart. I don't know, Luna. She disappeared a few months ago. Luna frowned, hugging the bear tighter. She got lost? Alejandro felt tears prick his eyes. Yes. She got lost. Luna was silent for a moment, processing this information. Then, to Alejandro's surprise, she reached out and offered him the bear. "You can hug him if you're sad," she said seriously. Alejandro felt his heart melt. He took the bear with trembling hands. "Thank you, Luna. That's very kind of you." At that moment, Carmela appeared at the door. "Mr. Valdez, breakfast is ready, and Detective Ramirez is here." Alejandro nodded. "Thank you, Carmela." "Luna, are you hungry?" Luna nodded excitedly. Together they went downstairs to the dining room, where Detective Ramirez was waiting, his expression serious. "Good morning, Mr. Valdez," Ramirez greeted. He softened his tone as he addressed Luna. "Hello, Luna. How are you today?" Luna hid behind Alejandro, peering cautiously at the detective. "It's okay, Luna," Alejandro reassured her. "Detective Ramirez is a friend. Why don't you have some breakfast while we talk?" While Carmela served breakfast, Alejandro and Ramirez stepped aside. "Has she said anything about the necklace?" Ramirez asked without preamble. Alejandro shook his head. "Not yet. I haven't wanted to push her." Ramirez frowned. "I understand your caution, Mr. Valdez, but we need answers. Every minute counts in cases like this." "I know." Alejandro ran a hand over his face, frustrated. "But she's just a scared little girl. I can't just interrogate her." "No one's suggesting interrogating her," Ramirez countered. "But we need to find out what she knows. I've brought in a child psychologist. Would it be okay if she tried to talk to Luna after breakfast?" Alejandro glanced at Luna, who was eating her breakfast with gusto. "All right," he finally agreed, "but I want to be present." "Of course," Ramirez nodded. After breakfast, Dr. Sanchez, the child psychologist, arrived. She was a middle-aged woman with a kind smile that immediately put Luna at ease. "Hello, Luna," she greeted. "My name is Elena. Would you like to play with me for a little while?" Luna looked to Alejandro for approval. He nodded with a reassuring smile. "Okay," Luna said. They settled in the living room, where Dr. Sanchez produced some toys and drawing materials. Alejandro and Ramirez observed from a discreet distance. "Luna," Dr. Sanchez began as they drew together, "can you tell me about that pretty necklace you're wearing?" Luna touched the necklace, her face turning serious. "It's special," she whispered. "Special? How?" Dr. Sanchez prompted gently. Luna frowned as if trying to recall something. "I don't know. I just know it's important. Did someone give it to you?" Luna shook her head. "I don't remember." Dr. Sanchez exchanged a glance with Ramirez before continuing. "Luna, can you tell me about your family? Where you lived before?" Luna's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know," she sobbed. "I can't remember." Alejandro took a step forward, his protective instincts kicking in, but Dr. Sanchez held up a hand for him to wait. "It's okay, Luna," she said in a soothing voice. "It's okay if you don't remember. How about you tell me about something you do remember? What's the very first thing you remember before you met Alejandro?" Luna was quiet for a moment, her little face concentrating. "I remember darkness and cold, and then bright lights, and Mr. Alejandro felt a lump in his throat. What had this poor girl been through? Dr. Sanchez continued talking gently for some time, but she wasn't able to extract much more information. Finally, she approached Alejandro and Ramirez. "She seems to have experienced some kind of trauma," she said quietly. "It's possible she's blocking out her memories as a coping mechanism, or it could be stress-induced amnesia. Either way, she'll need time and therapy to process what she's been through." Ramirez frowned. "But what about the necklace? Do you think she's lying about not remembering?" Dr. Sanchez shook her head. "I don't think she's lying. Her distress seems genuine, but the necklace clearly holds emotional significance for her, even if she can't remember why." Alejandro looked over at Luna, who was still drawing, seemingly oblivious to the adults' conversation. "What do we do now?" he asked, feeling more lost than ever. "For now, the best thing is to provide her with a stable and safe environment, continue with therapy, and see if, over time, her memories start to return," Dr. Sanchez replied. Ramirez didn't seem satisfied. "Mr. Valdez, I understand this is difficult, but we need to do more. That necklace is our only solid lead to your daughter's whereabouts." "And what do you suggest?" Alejandro asked, his frustration growing. That we press her until she breaks? She's just a little girl, for God's sake. No one's suggesting that, Dr. Sanchez interjected. But perhaps we could try other techniques. Play therapy, child hypnosis. Hypnosis? Alejandro was taken aback. Is that safe? In the hands of a qualified professional, yes, the doctor assured him. It could help access memories that her conscious mind has blocked. Alejandro ran a hand through his hair, feeling torn. On the one hand, he desperately wanted answers, any clue that could lead him to Sofia. But the thought of putting Luna through more stress churned his stomach. I need to think about it, he finally said. Ramirez nodded, though it was clear he wasn't happy with the lack of progress. All right, but we can't wait indefinitely, Mr. Valdez. Every day that passes... I know, Alejandro cut him off sharply. Believe me, I know better than anyone. When Ramirez and Dr. Sanchez left, Alejandro sat down next to Luna. What are you drawing? He asked gently. Luna showed him the picture. It was a jumble of dark shapes with a smaller figure seemingly trapped amongst them. It's beautiful, Alejandro said, a chill running down his spine. What is it? Luna frowned. I don't know. It just came out like that. Alejandro stared at the drawing, then at Luna, and finally at the necklace hanging around her neck. Doubt and hope warred within him. Was he doing the right thing, keeping Luna here? Was he projecting his own hopes and fears onto this innocent girl? Luna, he said finally, are you happy here? With me, I mean. Luna looked up at him with her big brown eyes. Yes, she said simply. I like being with you. You're kind. Alejandro felt a lump form in his throat. I'm glad, Luna. I enjoy having you here too. At that moment, Alejandro's phone rang. It was Garcia. Alejandro, we have a problem, Garcia said without preamble. Social Services is questioning your temporary custody of Luna. Alejandro tensed. What? Why? I thought we settled that. Apparently, someone tipped them off about the potential connection to Sofia's case. They're worried you might be, well, projecting your hopes onto Luna. Alejandro closed his eyes, frustrated. What can we do? We need to prove you're acting in Luna's best interest, Garcia replied. Have you considered hiring a professional nanny? Someone who can testify to Luna's well-being under your care? Alejandro looked over at Luna. The seed of an idea began to take root. Maybe this was the way to appease social services, provide Luna with a stable presence, and potentially unlock her lost memories. He knew finding Sofia was paramount, but he also felt a growing responsibility towards Luna. He wouldn't abandon her, not when she might hold the key to finding his daughter and to unraveling her own troubled past. Alejandro looked over at Luna, who was still drawing, oblivious to the conversation. Yes, do it. Whatever it takes. After hanging up, he approached Luna. Luna, how would you like it if someone came to play with you and help you while I work? Luna looked at him curiously. Like a friend? Alejandro smiled. Yes, like a friend. She'll stay with you when I can't be here. Luna considered this for a moment before nodding. Okay. The next day, Maria, an experienced nanny recommended by Garcia, arrived at the mansion. She was a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and kind eyes. Good morning, Mr. Valdez, she greeted. And you must be Luna. It's lovely to meet you. Luna, hiding behind Alejandro, peeked out shyly. Hello, she murmured. Maria has a lot of experience caring for children, Alejandro explained. She's going to stay with you when I have to work. Why don't you show her your drawings? Gradually, Luna warmed up to Maria. Alejandro watched them interact, feeling a mixture of relief and a strange ache in his chest. Seeing Luna smile and play was a painful reminder of Sofia. Later that day, while Luna was napping, Maria approached Alejandro. Mr. Valdez, can I speak with you for a moment? Alejandro nodded, leading her to his study. What is it, Maria? Is it about Luna? Maria began carefully. I've noticed some things that concern me. Alejandro tensed. What kind of things? Well, for one, her drawings. Maria pulled out several of Luna's drawings. They're disturbing. A lot of darkness, menacing figures. And then there's her behavior. Sometimes she seems to zone out, like she's reliving something. Alejandro examined the drawings, a shiver running down his spine. Do you think she's been abused? Maria sighed. It's hard to say for sure, but there are signs that point in that direction. Her fear of enclosed spaces, the way she flinches at loud noises. Anger welled up in Alejandro. The thought of someone harming Luna, any child, made him sick to his stomach. What can we do? Continue with therapy, that's crucial, Maria replied, and provide her with a stable, loving environment. But Mr. Valdez, there's something else that worries me. What is it? Maria looked him directly in the eye. Your relationship with Luna. It's clear you care deeply for her, but what? Alejandro felt himself getting defensive. I'm afraid you might be projecting your feelings for your missing daughter onto Luna, Maria said softly. It's understandable, but it could be harmful for both of you in the long run. Alejandro was silent for a moment, processing Maria's words. Part of him wanted to deny it, but deep down he knew there was truth in what she was saying. I don't know what to do, he admitted finally. I want to help Luna, but I also need to find Sophia. And that necklace? I understand, Maria said sympathetically, but you need to be careful. Luna needs to feel safe and loved for who she is, not who she might be or who she might lead you to. Before Alejandro could respond, they heard a scream from Luna's room. They both rushed over. Luna was sitting up in bed, crying and trembling. No, I don't want to go back. Please don't take me. Alejandro quickly went to her, embracing her. Shh. It's okay, Luna. You're safe. No one's going to take you anywhere. Luna clung to him, sobbing. There were bad men and darkness. It's okay, sweetheart, Alejandro murmured, rocking her gently. It was just a bad dream. You're safe here. Maria watched the scene with a mixture of concern and compassion. When Luna finally calmed down, Alejandro put her back to bed and stepped out of the room with Maria. This confirms my suspicions, Maria said quietly. She's been through something traumatic. Alejandro nodded, feeling overwhelmed. I need to do something. I can't just sit here and watch her suffer. I know, Maria said, but we must be careful. Pushing her too hard could make things worse. At that moment, Alejandro's phone rang. It was Detective Ramirez. Mr. Valdez, we have a lead, Ramirez said. We've identified a man who was seen in the area where you found Luna. He has a history of child trafficking. Alejandro felt his blood run cold. Do you think, could he be connected to Sophia's disappearance? It's possible, Ramirez replied. We need to question him, but he's on the run. We're organizing a search. I'm on my way there. I'm coming too, Alejandro said immediately. Mr. Valdez, I don't think that's a good idea. It's my daughter, Detective, Alejandro interrupted. I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. After hanging up, Alejandro turned to Maria. I need you to stay with Luna. I might be close to finding Sophia. Maria nodded, though her expression was one of concern. Be careful, Mr. Valdez. And remember, Luna needs you here too. Alejandro looked back towards Luna's room, feeling torn. On the one hand, the possibility of finding Sophia spurred him to action. But the thought of leaving Luna when she clearly needed him broke his heart. I'll be back soon, he promised. Take care of her. As he prepared to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was at a crossroads. Maria's words about projecting his feelings for Sophia onto Luna echoed in his mind. Was he doing the right thing? Was he letting his desperation to find Sophia cloud his judgment? He took one last look towards Luna's room before heading out. I promise I'll figure this out, he murmured. For you and for Sophia. Alejandro drove towards the address Detective Ramirez had given him. His heart pounded with a mixture of adrenaline and fear. Come on, he muttered, impatient at a red light. His phone rang. It was Garcia, frantic. Alejandro, where the hell are you? I'm following a lead on Sophia, he said, accelerating as the light turned green. Are you crazy? You're not a cop. You could be putting yourself in danger and jeopardizing the investigation. I can't just sit around, Manuel, not when I'm this close. And what about Luna? You left her alone? The question hit Alejandro like a punch to the gut. She's with Maria. She'll be fine. Alejandro, listen to me. Garcia's voice softened. I understand what you're going through, but you need to think clearly. Luna needs you. If something happens to you, who will look after her? Alejandro's resolve wavered. I I don't know, Manuel. I just know I have to do something. Come home, my friend. Let the police do their job. Your place is with Luna right now. Before Alejandro could answer, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. A man matching the description Ramirez had given him was exiting a rundown building. I'll call you later, he said quickly, hanging up before Garcia could protest. He parked his car and followed the man at a distance. His heart pounded so hard he was afraid the suspect could hear it. The man turned a corner, heading into an alley. Driven by adrenaline and desperation, Alejandro followed. Hey, you! He shouted. The man turned, startled, then took off running. Stop! I know what you did! The chase led through narrow alleys and side streets. Alejandro's lungs burned, but he refused to give up. Finally, in a dead end, the man was cornered. He turned towards Alejandro, pulling out a knife. Back off, he growled. You don't know who you're messing with. Alejandro raised his hands, but he stood his ground. I know exactly who you are. You took my daughter, didn't you? Where is Sophia? The man frowned, confused. What the hell are you talking about? I don't know any Sophia. Don't lie, Alejandro shouted, frustration and fear pushing him to the edge. The girl you left at my door. The necklace. You know something. The man looked genuinely bewildered. Girl? Necklace? Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but you better leave before things get ugly. At that moment, sirens wailed in the distance. The man cursed and tried to make a break for it, but Alejandro, driven by years of desperation and grief, lunged at him. They both crashed to the ground, struggling. The knife glinted under the dim alley light. Tell me where my daughter is, Alejandro shouted, grabbing the man's wrist, preventing him from using the knife. You're crazy, the man gasped, struggling to break free. Suddenly, a shot rang out. They both froze. Police! Don't move! Alejandro felt himself being pulled away from the man. He saw Detective Ramirez and several officers handcuffing the suspect. Mr. Valdez, Ramirez said, his voice a mix of concern and disapproval. What the hell do you think you're doing? Alejandro, still gasping for air, looked up at the detective with desperate eyes. He knows something. He has to know something about Sophia. Ramirez sighed. Mr. Valdez, this man is a suspected drug trafficker, not a kidnapper. He has nothing to do with your daughter's case. The words hit Alejandro like a bucket of cold water. But the necklace, Luna. I'm sorry, Ramirez said, his voice softening. I know you're desperate for answers, but this isn't the way. Alejandro slumped against the alley wall, all the adrenaline draining away, leaving him feeling empty and exhausted. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I don't know what I was thinking. Ramirez put a hand on his shoulder. Come on, I'll take you home. You have a little girl who needs you there. The drive back to the mansion was silent. Alejandro stared out the window, his mind a jumble of emotions and confused thoughts. He had been so close, so sure that he was finally on the verge of finding Sophia. But once again, it had been a false lead. He had let his desperation and grief get the better of him, jeopardizing both the investigation and his relationship with Luna. As he pulled up to the mansion, he saw Maria waiting on the porch, her face etched with worry. She rushed towards him as he got out of the car. Mr. Valdez, are you all right? What happened? I tried calling, but... Alejandro raised a hand to stop her, guilt washing over him. I'm sorry, Maria. I made a mistake. I went after a lead, but it was nothing. It wasn't Sophia. Maria looked at him with understanding and concern. It's all right. I know you're doing everything you can. He looked towards Luna's room, the weight of his choices settling upon him. He had been so focused on finding Sophia that he had almost lost sight of the little girl who needed him, the one who had brought a glimmer of hope and joy back into his life. He needed to find a way to balance his quest for answers with his responsibility to Luna. He entered the mansion, the echoes of empty halls mocking his failures. He went to Luna's room and found her asleep, clutching the teddy bear he had given her. He sat down beside her, watching her chest rise and fall with each breath. He had been chasing shadows, letting his grief consume him. Now he needed to focus on the light, the precious little girl who had been entrusted to his care. He would continue to search for Sophia, but he would also cherish the time he had with Luna, loving and protecting her, and hoping that one day they would both find the peace and answers they sought. When they arrived back at the mansion, Maria met them at the door, her face a mask of worry. Mr. Valdez, thank God you're all right. Luna has been asking for you. Alejandro felt a pang of guilt. How is she? Scared, Maria replied. She had another nightmare and has been very restless since you left. Alejandro winced, feeling more guilty with every word. Thank you, Maria. I'll go see her now. He climbed the stairs, feeling like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Entering Luna's room, he found her sitting on the bed, clutching the teddy bear he'd given her. Luna, he called softly. The girl looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. Alejandro, she cried, jumping off the bed and running towards him. Alejandro hugged her tightly, something breaking inside of him. I'm so sorry, little one. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have left you. Luna sobbed against his chest. I was scared. I thought you wouldn't come back. How? Who? Luna, Alejandro asked gently. Luna stiffened in his arms. I don't know. I was just scared. Alejandro stroked her hair, his heart breaking a little more. It's okay, Luna. I'm here now, and I promise I won't ever leave you like that again. They stayed like that for a long time, Alejandro rocking her gently while she slowly calmed down. Finally, Luna fell asleep in his arms. He gently tucked her into bed and stood watching her, feeling something shift within him. He went downstairs to find Ramirez and Maria waiting. Mr. Valdez, Ramirez began, I understand this is difficult, but we need to talk about what happened today. Alejandro nodded wearily. I know. It was stupid. I could have ruined the investigation, or worse. Not only that, Maria interjected. Mr. Valdez, Luna needs you here, stable, present. You can't help her if you're running around putting your life in danger. Alejandro sank into a chair, feeling defeated. You're right, both of you. It's just, I feel so helpless. I want to find Sophia, but I also want to help Luna, and I feel like I'm failing at both. Ramirez stepped closer, his voice softer than usual. Mr. Valdez, I understand your frustration, but you need to trust us. We are following every lead on Sophia. And as for Luna, the best way to help her is by providing stability and security. Maria nodded. Luna has been through something traumatic, that much is clear. She needs time, patience, and love to heal. And you can give her that. Alejandro looked at them both, something clarifying in his mind. You're right. I've been so fixated on finding answers that I've been neglecting what really matters. Taking care of Luna. That doesn't mean we stop looking for Sophia, Ramirez clarified. We will continue to investigate, but I need you to trust us and focus on taking care of Luna. Alejandro nodded slowly. I will, and thank you, both of you, for not letting me completely lose myself. That night, as Alejandro watched over Luna's sleep, he made a decision. He didn't know what the future held or if he would ever unravel the truth behind the necklace and its connection to Sophia. But he knew one thing for certain. He would do everything in his power to heal this little girl fate had brought into his life. Gently stroking Luna's hair, he whispered a promise. I don't know what the future holds, little one, but I promise you, no matter what happens, I'll be here for you. Together we'll find the truth and heal. That's a promise. And with that promise, Alejandro felt a new chapter beginning in his life, a chapter filled with uncertainty, but also with hope. The quest for truth would continue, but he now had a new purpose, to heal and grow alongside Luna, whatever fate had in store. The following days were a whirlwind of activity at the Valdez mansion. True to his word, Alejandro dedicated himself to Luna's care while working with Detective Ramirez and his legal team to navigate the complex legal proceedings required to secure temporary custody of the little girl. One morning, while Luna was drawing at the dining room table, Garcia arrived with news. Alejandro, he called from the doorway, his face a mixture of relief and concern. We have the custody hearing tomorrow. Alejandro's heart skipped a beat. So soon? Are we prepared? Garcia nodded. I've gathered all the necessary reports, Doctor. Sanchez's evaluation, Maria's testimony, even a statement from Detective Ramirez supporting your ability to care for Luna. Luna looked up from her drawing, her eyes wide and curious. What's a hearing? Alejandro knelt down beside her, searching for the right words. It's an important meeting, Luna. Some people are going to decide if you can stay here with me for a while. Luna's eyes welled up. Are they going to take me away? No, no. Alejandro quickly hugged her. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you stay here, okay? I promise. Garcia watched the scene with a mixture of compassion and worry. Alejandro, can we talk privately for a moment? Alejandro nodded, turning back to Luna. Keep drawing, little one. I'll be back in a moment. In the study, Garcia shut the door and looked seriously at his friend. Alejandro, I need you to understand, this hearing won't be easy. What do you mean? Alejandro felt a knot forming in his stomach. They're going to question your motives, Garcia explained. They're going to ask if you're trying to replace Sofia with if you're emotionally stable enough to care for a traumatized child. Alejandro sank into a chair, feeling the weight of his friend's words. I'm not trying to replace Sofia. Luna is Luna. Garcia sat down opposite him. I know, my friend, but you need to be prepared. They're going to dig into your past, your pain. You need to show them that you can separate your search for Sofia from your desire to care for Luna. And what if I can't? Alejandro's voice was barely a whisper. You can, Garcia affirmed firmly. I've seen you with her, Alejandro. You've changed. It's not just about finding answers anymore. You truly care for that little girl. Alejandro nodded slowly, something clarifying in his mind. You're right. Luna deserves a chance to heal, to be happy, and I want to be a part of that. No matter what happens with Sofia. Garcia smiled, squeezing his friend's shoulder. That's exactly what you need to show them tomorrow. The morning of the hearing arrived too soon. Alejandro adjusted his tie, feeling more nervous than he'd been in years. Are you ready? Maria asked, holding Luna's hand. Alejandro knelt down in front of Luna. Luna, listen. I'm going to go to that important meeting we talked about. You'll stay here with Maria, okay? You'll come back? Always? Luna asked, worry filling her eyes. I promise, Alejandro assured her, hugging her tightly. In the courtroom, Alejandro sat beside Garcia, his heart pounding. The judge, a middle-aged woman with piercing eyes, reviewed the documents in front of her. Mr. Valdez, the judge began, I understand you are requesting temporary custody of the minor known as Luna. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Alejandro replied, his voice firmer than he felt. Mr. Valdez, I must be frank, the judge continued. Your situation is unusual. You have a missing daughter, and now you're seeking custody of a little girl who mysteriously appeared wearing an object belonging to your daughter. Can you explain why you believe this is in Luna's best interest? Alejandro took a deep breath, remembering Garcia's words. Your Honor, when I found Luna, I believed she might be the key to finding my daughter. But over time, I realized that Luna is much more than that. She's a scared, hurt little girl who needs stability and love. And I want to provide that for her. And what about your search for your daughter? The judge pressed. Do you not fear that it may negatively impact Luna? Alejandro felt a lump forming in his throat, but he forced himself to continue. I love my daughter, Your Honor, and I will never stop looking for her. But I've learned that I can do that without neglecting Luna. She deserves a chance to heal and be happy, and I'm committed to providing that for her, no matter what happens with Sofia. The judge watched him for a long moment, as if trying to read his soul. Finally, she nodded slowly. Mr. Valdez, I have reviewed the reports submitted by your legal team. Dr. Sanchez speaks very highly of your interactions with Luna, and Detective Ramirez supports your ability to care for her. However, this is a delicate situation. Alejandro held his breath, waiting for the verdict. I am going to grant temporary custody, the judge finally said, but with conditions. I want monthly reports from Dr. Sanchez on Luna's progress, and you, Mr. Valdez, will attend therapy regularly to ensure you are adequately handling this situation. Alejandro felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Thank you, Your Honor. I will do whatever it takes. When he returned to the mansion, he found Luna waiting for him anxiously at the entrance. Alejandro, she cried, running towards him. Alejandro scooped her up into his arms, tears threatening to spill over. Hello, little one. I told you I would come back. Can I stay? Luna asked, hope and fear mingling in her eyes. Alejandro nodded, hugging her close. Yes, Luna. You can stay, I promise. I'll do everything I can to make sure you are safe and happy here." That night, as he tucked Luna into bed, she looked at him with her big brown eyes. "Alejandro, can I ask you something?" "Of course, little one. Anything." Luna hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Who is Sophia?" Alejandro felt his blood run cold. He had been careful not to mention Sophia in front of Luna, fearing he might confuse or frighten her. But of course, Luna was a smart girl. She must have heard the name at some point. "Sophia was my daughter," he said finally, his voice soft. "She disappeared a while ago." Luna frowned, processing this information. "Is that why you're sad sometimes?" Alejandro nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "Yes, Luna. I miss her very much." Luna reached out her small hand and touched his cheek. "Don't be sad. I'm here." Alejandro felt his heart melt at the gesture. "I know, little one, and I'm so grateful for that. Do you love me like you love Sophia?" Luna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alejandro's breath caught in his throat. He was surprised by the depth of her question. He thought carefully before responding. "Luna, I love you for who you are," he finally said. "You are a wonderful, brave, and special little girl. My love for Sophia and my love for you are different, but they are both very, very strong." Luna seemed satisfied with the answer. She snuggled closer to Alejandro, yawning. "I love you, Alejandro." "I love you too, Luna," Alejandro replied, his heart filling with a love he hadn't thought possible to feel again. As Luna drifted off to sleep, Alejandro reflected on the road ahead. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The mystery of the necklace still hung over them, and the search for Sophia continued. But for the first time in a long time, Alejandro felt hope. With Luna in his life, he had found a new purpose, a new reason to keep going. And though the pain of Sophia's loss would never fully disappear, he knew that with Luna by his side, he could face whatever challenges the future might hold. As he quietly closed Luna's bedroom door, Alejandro made a silent promise. He would protect this little girl with everything he had. He would help her heal and grow, and together, maybe they would find the answers they both needed to close the wounds of the past and look towards a future filled with love and hope. The days that followed were filled with new routines and heartwarming discoveries. Alejandro, balancing his responsibilities as CEO and Luna's guardian, found himself adapting to a life he hadn't expected. He cherished the simple moments, reading bedtime stories, playing in the garden, watching Luna's laughter fill the mansion that had once felt so empty. He continued to work tirelessly with Detective Ramirez, chasing down every lead, clinging to the hope that one day Sophia would be found. But he also made sure to prioritize Luna's well-being, attending therapy sessions as mandated by the court, learning how to better understand and support her emotional needs. Maria proved to be an invaluable source of comfort and guidance, providing a stable presence for Luna and offering insightful advice to Alejandro. Together, they created a safe and loving environment for the little girl, allowing her to heal and flourish at her own pace. One evening, while having dinner with Luna and Maria, Alejandro received a call from Garcia. "Alejandro," Garcia said, his voice serious, "I have news. We may have a breakthrough in Sophia's case." Alejandro's heart leaped into his throat. "What is it? What did you find?" "We received an anonymous tip. It's about a woman who claims to have information about Sophia. She's agreed to meet with us tomorrow." Alejandro couldn't believe it. After all this time, could this be the answer he had been waiting for? He looked at Luna, who was drawing pictures at the table, her face lit up with a carefree smile. He felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected gift, for the chance to finally find closure, for Sophia, and for himself. He would never forget his daughter, but he had also learned that his heart was big enough to love another child, to provide her with the safety and happiness she deserved. The next day, Alejandro, accompanied by Detective Ramirez, met with the informant. The meeting was tense and emotional, filled with revelations and uncertainties. The woman provided details about Sophia's disappearance, confirming their suspicions that she had been kidnapped, but offering no concrete information about her current whereabouts. It was a step forward, but the road ahead remained long and arduous. As he returned to the mansion, his heart heavy with a mixture of hope and renewed grief, he thought about Luna. He had almost lost sight of her, consumed by his relentless pursuit of Sophia. He realized that his journey wasn't just about finding his missing daughter. It was also about embracing the present, cherishing the love and connection he had with Luna, and honoring the complexities of his own heart, which was capable of holding both profound sorrow and boundless love. He walked into the mansion, the sound of Luna's laughter echoing through the hallway. He found her playing with Maria, a scene that warmed him from the inside out. He knelt down beside Luna, taking her small hand in his. "I missed you, little one," he whispered. Luna looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I missed you too, Alejandro." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of Luna's love, Alejandro felt a sense of peace he hadn't known since Sophia's disappearance. He realized that the quest for truth was an ongoing journey, but that he didn't have to walk it alone. He had Luna, Maria, and Garcia by his side, and together they would face whatever challenges came their way, with hearts filled with hope, resilience, and love. Adebola smiled, "And he would be as proud of you as I am." Zainab, sensing the intimacy of the moment, excused herself to check on the final details of the ceremony. Alone, Adebola took her daughter's hands. "Amara, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Are you sure you want to do this? Marry a man whose family doesn't accept you?" Amara frowned. "Mama, we've already talked about this. I love Carlos." "I know, honey, but love isn't always enough. Have you thought about how difficult it will be? The comments, the stares?" Amara pulled away, her face a mix of determination and frustration. "You think I haven't thought about it? That I haven't spent countless nights worrying about that? But Mama, if I give up now, if I let fear and prejudice win, what message would I be sending?" Adebola smiled sadly. "The same message your father and I sent when we left Nigeria, that sometimes to build a better life, you have to leave the past behind. This is different, Mama. I'm not running away. I'm facing the problem head on. Carlos and I, together, we can change things. We can prove that love is stronger than any prejudice." Adebola pulled her daughter into a hug. "Oh, my brave girl. Your father would be so proud of you." "I'm proud of you too, honey." Amara wiped away a stray tear. "Thank you, Mama. Now come on, I have a wedding to get to." Guests were taking their seats in the ballroom. The air buzzed with anticipation and hushed conversation, mingled with soft music. Miguel, as best man, was greeting guests at the door when he froze. Alejandro Valdez had just walked in. "Mr. Valdez," Miguel said, his voice tight. "We weren't expecting you." Alejandro cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Miguel, where's my son? Getting ready." "Mr. Valdez, with all due respect, what are you doing here? If you've come to cause trouble—" "I'm not here to cause trouble." Alejandro's voice was weary. "I know I've made mistakes. A lot of mistakes. But I'm here now. Can I see Carlos?" Before Miguel could respond, Elena appeared. "Alejandro?" she asked, surprised. Alejandro nodded. "Can I talk to Carlos?" Elena and Miguel exchanged glances. Finally, Elena said, "All right, but I'm warning you, Alejandro, if you do anything to ruin this day—" "I won't, I promise," Alejandro said, his eyes pleading. "I just want to talk to my son." Elena led him to the room where Carlos was getting ready. She knocked softly. "Carlos, honey, there's someone here to see you." The door opened and Carlos stood frozen, staring at his father. "Papa?" he whispered. "What are you doing here?" Alejandro stepped forward, his eyes filled with emotion. "Carlos, my son, I've come to ask for your forgiveness." Carlos remained silent, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "I know I've hurt you," Alejandro continued, his voice cracking. "I know I've been stubborn and prejudiced, and a terrible father, but I'm here now. If you'll allow me, I'd like to be at your wedding." Carlos glanced at his father, then at Elena, who gave a small nod of encouragement. "Why now, Papa? What's changed?" Alejandro sighed. "Everything has changed, son. I've changed, or at least I'm trying to. Last night, I talked to Amara." Carlos's eyes widened. "You spoke to Amara? She called me, and she made me see how much I was hurting you, how much I was missing by being so stubborn." Carlos ran a hand through his hair, agitated. "Papa, you can't just show up like this and expect everything to be okay. You've said horrible things. You've done horrible things." I know, son, and I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I'm just asking for a chance. A chance to be here today, to meet Amara, to be a part of your life again. Years of hurt and resentment warred with love and the longing for reconciliation. What if I'm not ready to give you that chance? Carlos's voice broke. Alejandro nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. I understand. I'll leave, if that's what you want. But I want you to know I'm proud of you, Carlos. Proud of the man you've become, despite my failings. Carlos was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, You can stay, but I don't promise anything, Papa. I know, son, and I promise you, I'll do everything I can to earn back your trust. Carlos nodded. Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to finish getting ready. I'm getting married in a few minutes. Alejandro smiled, a real, genuine smile for the first time in months. Of course, Carlos, and thank you. As Alejandro left the room, Elena came over to her nephew. You okay, honey? Carlos took a deep breath. I don't know, Aunt Elena, but I think I did the right thing. Elena hugged him. I'm proud of you, Carlos. Now come on, you have a bride waiting. The music started playing. Everyone stood as Amara appeared, radiant in her white dress. Carlos waited for her at the altar, his face alight with love and emotion. As Amara walked down the aisle, their eyes met. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The family drama, the prejudice, the difficulties. None of it mattered. There was only them and the love they shared. Reaching the altar, Carlos took her hands. You look beautiful, he whispered. Amara smiled. And you look very handsome. Are you ready? Carlos nodded. More than ever. The officiant began the ceremony. Dear friends and family, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Carlos and Amara. As the ceremony progressed, Carlos couldn't help glancing at his father. Alejandro sat in the back row, watching with a mix of pride, regret, and something Carlos hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. Carlos and Amara have written their own vows, the officiant announced. Carlos, would you like to go first? Carlos took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on Amara. Amara, when I met you, my world changed. Not just because I fell in love with you, but because you taught me to see the world differently. You showed me that love has no color, that family is more than blood, and that true strength lies in staying true to yourself, no matter the consequences. He paused, his voice catching. These past few months have been difficult, but you have been my rock. You have shown me that love can overcome any obstacle. I promise to always be there for you, through good times and bad. I promise to love you, respect you, and support you in everything you do. And I promise that together, we will build a future filled with love, understanding, and mutual respect. Tears of joy streamed down Amara's face. The officiant turned to her. Amara, your turn. Amara took Carlos's hands, gazing into his eyes. Carlos, from the moment I met you, I knew you were special, not just for your kindness and your smile, but for your heart. A heart that sees beyond appearances, that fights for what's right, that loves without condition. She paused, taking a deep breath. These months have been challenging, yes, but they have shown me how strong you are, how brave you are. You have taught me that true love requires sacrifice, but that it's worth every single moment. I promise to always be by your side, to be your partner in every adventure, your support in every challenge. I promise to love you through thick and thin, to always respect you, and to build with you a home filled with love, understanding, and acceptance. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Alejandro, sitting in the back, discreetly wiped away a tear. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Carlos, you may kiss the bride. Carlos cupped Amara's face and kissed her, a tender, heartfelt kiss. Applause filled the room as they turned to face their guests. Carlos's heart skipped a beat. His father was standing, clapping along with everyone else. Their eyes met, and Carlos saw something he hadn't expected, a genuine smile on his father's face. Later, during the reception, Carlos noticed his father standing alone in a corner, holding a glass of champagne. Hesitantly, he approached him. Papa? Alejandro turned, a tentative smile on his face. Son, it was a beautiful ceremony. Thank you, Carlos replied. There was a moment of awkward silence before Carlos spoke again. I'm, I'm glad you came. Alejandro nodded. Me too, son, me too. Before they could say more, Amara joined them. Carlos, honey, your Aunt Elena wants... She stopped short, seeing Alejandro. Carlos took Amara's hand. Amara, I don't think you formally met my father. Papa, this is Amara, my wife. Alejandro stared at Amara. For a moment, Carlos feared the worst. Then to his surprise, Alejandro extended his hand. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Amara. His voice was surprisingly gentle. And I'd like to apologize for everything. Amara took his hand, a cautious smile on her face. Thank you, Mr. Valdez. I appreciate that. Please call me Alejandro. He looked at both of them. I know I have a lot to make up for, a lot to learn, but if you'll give me the chance, I'd like to try. Carlos and Amara exchanged a look. It's a start, Papa, Carlos said finally. A good start. The tension eased. As they began to talk, Carlos noticed how his father actually listened to Amara, asking her about her work, her family, her dreams. Across the room, Elena smiled. It was a new beginning, a chance for healing, a chance for family. And it was all thanks to the love of a brave young couple who dared to choose love over prejudice, hope over despair.